Hey guys, so in this video I'm going to be talking about why new players quit Black Desert Online at a higher rate than I've seen new players quit other MMOs. So, quick disclaimer, this is all going to be anecdotal evidence. It's all friends of mine that have joined and quit, people I know that have joined and quit, guildmates I know that have joined and quit, guildmates of friends who have told me about stories like this, or just people that I've talked to in running this channel. So, Black Desert is a game where the new player experience is key to why new players join the game, rate it very highly at first, and then leave within usually about 2 weeks to maybe 2 months of joining the game. And that's because there's 3 real stages to the new player experience in Black Desert. Black Desert's new player experience starts off very strong. In fact, I would rate Black Desert's new player experience at the beginning as probably the best new player experience of any MMO I've ever played since my first MMO, which would have been RuneScape back in 2004, 2005. So it starts off with character creation, and Black Desert's character creation is probably the best character creation I've ever seen. They could sell this character creation as its own standalone client to create fantasy models and avatars, and people would buy it. It's that good. You can spend hours and hours in Black Desert content creator or a character creator and come out with entirely different looking characters, and it's amazing. And this is what new players are greeted by when they fire up the game for the first time. They get to see all the classes with the cool little videos playing on the bottom right, and then they get to make that class look pretty much however they like within the bounds of the character creator. Following that, they get sent to Alvia, and the graphics of the game match how amazing the character looks. The graphics in Black Desert are stunning. The vistas are incredible. You can go and look at the sea, you can go up mountains, you can go to the desert. There are so many different locations, and they all look amazing. And right after you find out how cool the graphics are, you get thrust into the combat. And Black Desert's combat is, just like its graphics, probably the best in MMOs right now. There's no other MMO that can really compete with Black Desert in terms of how fun the combat is. Terra, Blade and Soul, none of them are as fun. Guild Wars 2, ESO, World of Warcraft, Final Fantasy XIV, all different types of combat. None of them, in my opinion, as fun as Black Desert's. And for most new players, they'll follow the Black Spirit's quest, they'll go to different areas, starting off in Balanos, then Serendia, then Calpheon, and they'll have a lot of fun questing, killing monsters. The quest line itself, it's nothing amazing or anything. In fact, it kind of sucks, but at least you can kind of follow along with it at first, and it will make some sense. And it does bring you to level appropriate areas, which is good for new players. The new player experience in Black Desert starts off incredibly strongly, and it's great. However, then you get to the stage where people first start to quit, and that's what I call stage 2, or the overwhelmed stage. This usually occurs around level 45 to 50, although sometimes it happens a bit before that, and it usually happens when the player starts to look up information about Black Desert. Usually because either they want to earn silver for better gear, because they're finding that either they've hit manshaws or catfish men, or maybe they went to giants a bit early, or maybe they went to Medea to farm the Asula set like they were told to by someone in server chat, or they joined a guild and were told to farm the Asula set, and they wanted to look up this information, and Helms were murdering them, and they wanted to upgrade their gear. Well, once you start looking into Black Desert, it's a very complex game, and there's a lot of content that Black Desert has to offer. And this is both a good and a bad point. On the one hand, it's good because the more content a game has to offer, the more you can get engaged, the more you can be involved, and the more you have to do apart from just mindlessly grinding, which is all Black Desert really had to offer for most players that are just starting out. They don't get taught about gathering until you reach that little town of Florin, just northeast of Calpheon. And other life skills, you get taught about them a little, but it's more left up for you to discover. So once players start to learn about the worker empire, how CP works, how energy topics work, how enhancement and fail stacking work, it can all be a little overwhelming. And as they learn about all this, they also start to learn about the cash shop. And usually they get taught about pretty much the most important purchase in the cash shop, which is pets. They don't have to really know about lodgings or storage or weight or the processing outfit. Don't need to worry about any of that yet. They're just kind of starting with the very basics of Black Desert beyond just simple combat and questing. And a lot of players, they'll still keep fighting through this because Black Desert is a lot of fun and there's a lot to experience. And the more content the game has to offer, usually the better the game is. So most players won't quit at Stage 2. However, Stage 2 leads into Stage 3. And Stage 3 is really when players start to quit. And that's when players start to realize what Endgame in Black Desert really means, both in terms of getting to Endgame and what participating in Endgame involves. So, Endgame in Black Desert is a long way away. Most players that quit on the journey to Endgame would be about 56, and 57 is really the level I notice a lot of players quit at. And that's because 56, 57, and these days even 58, because 58 is pretty easy to get now, is when a player has played long enough that they've been grinding. They've probably grinded for at least 10, 15 hours, and they're starting to realize what the game entails, the reliance on silver, that they need pets if they want to earn money while grinding, how AFK income works. They're starting to realize all this, and also how far away Endgame works. And the other big kind of tipping point for a lot of new players, is when they get kicked off the Alvia servers and start to realize how powerless a new player is compared to someone that isn't even at endgame, just sort of mid-game. A player in full tri-boss gear will make short work of a player wearing full duo green gear, which is actually quite difficult for a new player to get. Most new players will struggle to earn new green gear. They struggle to earn the tens of millions required, even just for about 45 million silver for a brand new piece of duo ultimate Gruntle gear. It's even worse for weapons at about 65 million silver, and earning this money is not easy for a new player, and realizing that all of their gear put together isn't even worth a single piece of tri-gear, and tri-gear is only worth about half of even less than half actually, of a similar piece of tet gear, is really disheartening to players. And as they realize how much experience is going to be needed, how much they're going to need to grind, leaving their computer on all night so they can AFK, as well as getting more involved with the Pearl Shop and starting to realize all the modern MMO mechanics that exist in other MMOs, such as World of Warcraft, such as auto loot. Auto loot's the big one for pets. Sort of a normal inventory or weight system, and all this stuff that has been removed from Black Desert and sold back to players through the Pearl Shop. Grinding also becomes their life as they realize that they want to get to 60 or even 61 for the Capote ring. And then, of course, there's 62, but 62 is, even for veterans, 62 is a little out there. So this is where a lot of new players really start to quit. A lot of my guildies that, if you open up your guild list and your guild leader doesn't prune guildies, usually for about a week or two, you'll notice a lot of offline accounts that have been offline for probably a week, maybe even a week and a half, that were about 56, 57. You'll notice a lot of players on your friends list that had just gotten their awakening a couple days to maybe a week or two ago that have never logged in again. A lot of players that come to ask me questions will usually quit not long after awakening. They'll get their awakening, get 56, 57, and then just decide Black Desert is not the game for them, because endgame in Black Desert involves a lot of work and a lot of effort. And the payoff for endgame in Black Desert isn't that great. There's a saying in Black Desert that hitting 56 is the end of the tutorial. And that's also a saying in a lot of other games, such as World of Warcraft or Guild Wars 2, where hitting max level, it's the end of the tutorial, now the real game can start. You can start doing dungeons, you can start doing raids, participate in a high-level PvP, get your endgame armor sets, get your weapons, and this is when the true game really starts. In Black Desert, it's kind of the same way, but you're not doing anything different in Black Desert. In World of Warcraft, once you hit level, right now it's 110, in about a month it'll go up. Once you hit max level, you start gearing up, you start getting blues and then later epics, you start to run dungeons, and then you run better dungeons so that you can run even better dungeons, and you run raids, and you start to participate in arena or rated battlegrounds. All this is open to you once you hit 110. Before that, you could still run dungeons, but they weren't endgame dungeons. Raids were more for transmogrification, so extra gear, and battlegrounds and arena were more just for fun or to practice mechanics because you don't have all your tools equipped, you don't have all your skills yet, and you don't have endgame stats. In Black Desert, the things you do at 57, 58 are the exact same things you're doing at level 5, level 10, level 20, or even level 50 to 55. It's all the same. You keep on grinding. All that changes is the monsters you grind against. You still want to be able to one-shot packs. You still want to be able to defend your rotation against other players. Getting PvP'd by other players is also very demoralizing, because once you leave the Alvia server, you get killed very easily. A player, even if you got like Tri-Green and maybe a Tri-Zarka, which is a lot of money for a new player, you're still going to get obliterated by a player that's wearing full Tri-Boss gear, or even better, a soft cap player. A soft cap player, they can probably pretty much one-shot you. If they can't one-shot you, they can at the very least one-combo you with ease, thanks especially to the Renown system. So the new player experience really starts to falter once players hit level 56, even just level 55, level 54. Once they hit where leveling starts to take more than 10-20 minutes per level, once they hit to the point where leveling is hours and hours for maybe 5% an hour, and even less as you go forward, 59, it's like 4% an hour, 60, it's like 2 to 3% an hour, depending on when you're grinding. As a newer player, as a more experienced player, you can get a bit better experience, but not by much. And it really starts to suck the life out of them, because Endgame is just more the same. You grind to get better gear to fight better monsters, you grind to get better gear so you can fight in better node wars, so you can earn more money from the nodes to get better gear to fight in better nodes, or even for castles, and that's all Black Desert has to offer for Endgame. Now, a lot of players will say, oh, but Lighthouse, Black Desert's so much more than just grinding. You can life skill and you can explore. And yes, those aspects of Black Desert do exist, but for the MMO community, most players that are involved in life skilling, they're heavily involved in the skill aspect. And by skill, I don't mean like technical skill, I mean more life skills. They don't necessarily come to games like Black Desert to skill. Like, there are a lot of players that play Black Desert for life skills. I have been in life skill guilds myself. For anyone that knows the name Luxury Elite, I was part of that guild, for example. And life skilling is a great thing in Black Desert. But there are games that I would say do life skilling a lot better than Black Desert and make the player feel a lot more involved than Black Desert life skilling does. And Black Desert life skilling, it's rather shallow. Once you know how to process one thing, you pretty much know how to process anything. All that changes are the recipes, and you don't really need to do anything special to get most recipes, unless you need to go out and gather specific items, such as logs or rough stones. Most recipes are fairly easy. Some recipes you can't even do yourself, you have to send to workers, which divorces the player from the product and makes it feel less of their own accomplishment and more of just pressing buttons in the game, which is all most crafting systems are, but the entire point is to immerse the player so it doesn't feel like that. And Endgame in Black Desert is really just the same thing all game long, but the effort required to get Endgame in Black Desert is immense. I've been playing Black Desert for over a year, for almost a year and a half now, and despite playing a lot, which as a content creator I play a lot more than the average player does, I am still not at Endgame. I am not at soft cap yet. I have some tech gear, I have all my Tri-Boss gear at the very minimum, with the exception of Dimtree. But I'm not at Endgame yet, and a lot of players are even lower than I am. And this is the point where a lot of players start to quit, because they realize that Endgame is unfeasible for them. It takes way more of their time, and as a gamer in today's age, you have to make a choice between which games you want to play. If you want to play Overwatch, that's less time spent grinding in Black Desert. If you want to play Black Desert, that's less time spent playing Overwatch, or Smash Brothers, or World of Warcraft, or whatever other new games there are that have come out, or even old games that you want to revisit. Yes, you can AFK in Black Desert, which is definitely one of its charms, but a lot of players don't want to AFK in Black Desert because it does consume their computer's resources. They do have to leave it on all the time, and occasionally you just want to let your computer rest. So, Endgame Black Desert really, it's a long way away, and it starts to become very recognizable once you hit level 56, level 57. Once the tutorial, finger quotes, is done, it's really easy to see how far away Endgame is, especially the more into it you get, when you realize that a single piece of Endgame gear, like a Tri-Boss accessory, like a Crescent Ring, will cost more than all of your gear put together in the stage before Tri-Boss gear. That is really disheartening. So the new player experience in Black Desert starts off really strong. It starts off the character creation, the graphics, and the combat, all amazing. They're all like best in the industry. No other MMO even comes close to being able to knock Black Desert off its perch, and it's this niche that Black Desert sort of exploits, along with its nature as an open world PvP game, which a lot of players come to the game to enjoy the open world PvP. That is one of its biggest draws, and new players flock to the game because they love that idea. But as they start to learn more about the game, as they learn about how far away Endgame is, and especially once they get kicked off the Olivia server, or even if they're on the Olivia server and they run into a returning player that has actual gear, they start to realize that apart from the amazing graphics and combat, the game is the same the entire way through. All that changes are the animations and the monsters you're fighting. Open world PvP is great, but as a new player, and even months afterwards as you try to get better gear, it's difficult to get fair matchups. Most of the time it's a stomp one way or the other. Either you stomp the opponent because you have better gear than they do, or they stomp you because they have better gear than you do. And there's not many fights, especially early on for the first couple months, that are really in the middle. It's either you find an absolute newbie that has terrible gear that you can stomp, or you get stomped by someone that's got much better gear than you, who's been around for longer than you have. And so the new player experience really fails to keep the player in. It takes too long to get from being a new player to being a player that can compete. And honestly, that word competition is really what kind of separates Black Desert from other games. Other games you can compete very early on. Guild Wars 2 is probably the best example because Guild Wars 2, you hit 80, you get some karma exotics, basically welfare exotics, and you're off to the races. You can now fight other players. Are you going to do well? Probably not, but you can still beat other players that are level 80, have been playing a lot longer than you, have ascended gear, have legendaries, because as long as you outskill them, your gear is good enough to allow you to compete. In Black Desert, even if you hit 60, if you're still wearing tri-greens, you're going to get demolished by a soft cap player. It's not even going to be a competition. They could probably stand and let you attack them for like 10 seconds, and then hit you with some skills and you die anyways, even though you've been attacking them for a long time. So the new player experience really fails newer players, and that's why a lot of new players quit Black Desert. They realize that despite the shiny veneer of the really beautiful graphics, despite the a visceral feeling of combat, how great it feels to tear through enemies. Like seriously, I have more fun playing Black Desert combat-wise than I do Dynasty Warriors, a game built around the idea of combat and making a player a little god that tears through thousands of enemies at once. But once the player gets past the nice graphics and the great combat, Black Desert has nothing else to offer. Everything else will take you pretty much forever, unless you want to do life skilling. And if you want to be a life skiller, there are better games to do life skilling in, unless you really just want the feeling of life skilling 24/7, in which case Black Desert does offer that for sure. That is something Black Desert has. So new players, they come into Black Desert full of hopes and dreams and willing to do open world PvP and join guilds for massive guild versus guild sieges every week. And then they quickly realize that it's going to be several weeks to months before they're even ready to join the lowest tier of guilds, where they can spend a couple weeks to months being trashed on by other guilds who have soft cap members that will one-shot them and move on to one-shotting anyone else like them in the guild. And after several months of this and several $100s in real-life money, because you are going to want pets, you are going to want at least weight or inventory for one character, you are probably going to want to get, at a very minimum, a costume, either processing or fishing, maybe cooking if you're into Imperial cooking, and you're probably going to want a few other things from the cash shop as well. And maybe if you want to be competitive, you're probably going to want artisan memories as well, because artisan memories do make the journey much easier. And this wears on players, and a lot of players quit because Endgame is too far away. There are players that quit before this too. A few of my friends actually quit earlier on, around like level 40 to 50, because they just kind of realized that as a Korean MMO, Black Desert's grinding was just going to be too intense for them. And Black Desert is a game that, like I said, you got to choose between other games, but Black Desert also takes time away from other engagements. If you want to be grinding every night so that you can get to Node Wars faster, you do have to give stuff up. And that's the same with everything in life. If you want to go out and drink with friends, you've got to be willing to not spend the night with your girlfriend. If you want to spend the night with your girlfriend, you have to be willing not to go to dinner with your family. If you want to go to dinner with your family, you have to be willing to maybe study a little later for homework, or if you want to not have to do your homework that night because you want more sleep, you have to be willing to accept that you're going to have to study harder at school. So It's all about giving stuff up, but Black Desert demands a lot of your time, a lot more than other games do. You play Overwatch, you can get a few games in an hour. You can probably get 3, maybe 4 games in if you get some fairly competitive games that don't go to overtime every single round. So Black Desert, you probably want to use an hour every night just for the grinding hour, and that's not to mention taking care of your workers, taking care to make sure your AFK stuff is always going on, such as processing, turning in Imperial Trade, managing your workshops. So Black Desert, it demands a lot of your time, and players can realize that fairly early on as well. A lot of my friends realized that around level 30 to 40, like I was saying, and they quit before they got too invested. And then some players, they'll play for a little and realize Black Desert just isn't for them at all. And that's a personal opinion. Like, if you don't like the combat in Black Desert because you kind of get overwhelmed by action combat, that's a personal thing. I actually know players like that have quit Black Desert because the combat was too fast-paced for them, and they wanted something a bit slower, like WoW, and that's also fine. But the new player experience in Black Desert, it really fails to keep new players in the game after a certain amount of time. They don't really get to contribute to the game long enough to replace endgame players that phase out, because endgame players, they do phase out fairly often. It seems every month there's probably a few new posts from endgame players that of quitting and did a pen roulette to quit or threw away their gear. It's only been a couple months since the last major exodus of a guild. Man Up only left like 2 weeks ago. While some members did go to other guilds, other members did just quit. FML left to private servers months ago. And as these endgame players leave, if the new player experience isn't improved, it's less and less likely that new players will come to Black Desert and stay to replace these endgame players as these endgame players leave for other games. And other games is also a concern, because Black Desert's big advantage, like I've been saying, is its combat and its graphics, but as well as open world PvP. But as other games come out, like the next 2 years are actually pretty good for MMOs in terms of releases. There's games such as Lost Ark, Crowfall, Pantheon Rise of the Fallen, the new Dark Age of Camelot is coming out. There are a bunch of upcoming games, especially Battle for Azeroth, World of Warcraft, is going to take a lot of players back in. I know several players that I know personally, a lot of my friends, I myself, are all going to be playing Black Desert a lot less. I'll be spending a lot more time AFK processing come August 14th when Battle for Azeroth goes live. I'm still going to play Black Desert, of course, but for at least a month or so, maybe 2 months, I'm going to be rather deep in Battle for Azeroth. And as more MMOs come out, the odds of a game that is like Black Desert and has graphics or combat to match, as well as open world PvP, but isn't as exploitative towards the players and doesn't demand as much of their time to get to endgame, becomes more and more likely. And if a game like that truly does come out, if the new player experience in Black Desert isn't improved, new players are just going to go to a game like that and play that game, because there they can get endgame, they won't get stomped, and they can feel like valuable contributing members of an endgame guild or an endgame team or task force or whatever it might be. So the new player experience in Black Desert could definitely use some improvements. I'm not going to suggest any this video, but it's a topic that is pretty dear to me, as I am exposed a lot more to new players than the average Black Desert player is, because new players come to me for advice because I make guides on my channel. Anyways, guys, I hope this video was helpful to you. Comment below what you'd like to see improve for Black Desert's new player experience. I know a lot of players take issue with these sorts of videos because they feel that if Black Desert implements changes to improve the new player experience, it will devalue their own efforts. If they make leveling even easier, if they make getting soft cap even easier, it will devalue older players' efforts. But devaluing the efforts of older players is a traditional thing in MMOs. Black Desert's already done that a few times. When the soft cap was raised from 55 to 60, a lot of players were pretty annoyed because they'd done a lot of effort to get to level 55 in that time. But it's just how it is in MMOs. In World of Warcraft, I spent a lot of time getting my character to 110, but new patch is going to come out, Battle for Azeroth is going to come out, and I'm going to have to work to 120. But improving the endgame experience and improving the new player experience is something MMOs have to do, and Black Desert's been putting this off for a long time. We have not changed the endgame gear set, we have not changed the endgame level for a long time now. It's been over a year, it's been like a year and a half, I think, since the last big changes. And it's about time that we took a serious look at making the new player experience in Black Desert easier, because all the changes for the past couple months have been making it harder. Renown score, it's made it harder. Changes to how combat works has forced players to relearn the classes, but it's also increased RNG, which makes it a bit easier to just get into combat because RNG increases variance in a fight, but it also makes things more difficult for new players when changes to classes keep happening, as they're already trying to learn the class to begin with. If the classes keep getting new changes, it makes it more difficult for a new player. So it's about time that we start focusing on improving the new player experience rather than just focusing on the players that are already here. Anyways, guys, as always, thanks for watching. Like I said, comment below what types of changes you'd like to see to improve the new player experience. It could be changes to how progression works, how gear works, how scaling works, or even just to how Endgame itself works. Anyways, as always, guys, thanks for watching, and have a good one.